We're so done with new year, new you. This year, it's more you on Bumble. More of you shamelessly sending playlists, especially that one filled with show tunes. More of you finding Geminis because you know you always like them. More of you dating with intention because you know what you want. And you know what? We love that for you. Someone else will too. Be more you this year and find them on Bumble.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger Delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
The Athletic.
They used to dominate MotoGP, but now Yamaha and Honda are just scrabbling their way slowly back up the field. Both of them have big changes in various ways going into the 2025 season, though, and Simon Patterson is fresh from hearing all about them and seeing what they look like, having just attended the Honda and Yamaha launches. This is the Race MotoGP Podcast. I'm Matt Beer. It's just me and Simon this morning. We've done a few of these two-handers kind of by accident lately, whether Simon was on a plane or I was busy with something else, and they've worked kind of okay. But I can promise, me, Simon and Val are still friends. We'll be back on the same podcast at some point in the coming week. For this morning, though, we've actually sent Val to prepare for a video about Yamaha, which, given Val's general Yamaha opinions, is bound to be full of positivity. You can see that on our MotoGP YouTube channel, probably about the same time as this podcast. But Simon, first of all, I have absolutely no idea where you are. I've lost track.
Me neither.
Your last few days have been, even by your standards, a kind of epic travel mission, haven't they?
Yeah. So on Wednesday, I was with some of the other race staff at the Race Media Awards in London. Since then, I've went from London to Dublin, Dublin to Qatar, Qatar to Singapore, Singapore to Kuala Lumpur, got off a plane in Kuala Lumpur, went to a hotel, had a shower, went to the Yamaha launch, got 6 hours sleep, got up the next morning, flew to Jakarta, got off a plane, went to a hotel, had a shower, went to the Honda launch, spent 6 hours in Jakarta afterwards and flew back to Kuala Lumpur and get into my hotel last night in near the circuit in Sepang, expecting that there wouldn't be many people around and it would be, quite quiet. And while I was checking in, Pedro Acosta walked past and was like, "Oh, you're staying here." So it turns out that the KTM Tech 3 and Trackhouse are all in the hotel as well.
Oh, excellent.
So it's just been like kind of hanging out with a load of people that I know. It's very much the back at school vibes now that we're getting ready for testing. So thankfully I've got like another day to chill out, and then we've got 3 days of testing, and then I fly to Bangkok, get off a plane, go to a hotel, check in, grab a shower, go to the LCR launch. So yeah, it's busy.
Well, one, it's good that you're fitting in showers. That's great. And two, I'm glad as well. Thank you, Pedro Acosta and other people, that this back to school vibe is here, because you sound quite happy, more than I thought you might be at this point. So
it's like I'm slightly delusional at the minute. So it's
That'll do. Similar, same end result. So we're going to spend this podcast kind of weighing up Yamaha versus Honda. Like I said at the outset, it used to be a battle for championships. Now it's a battle to avoid being last, to kind of scrape the odd Q2 place, to see who might even get back on the podium properly first. I already know that you have slightly different vibes from those two launches, Simon. So before we talk about the really tangible stuff around development changes, that kind of thing, launch-wise, one did a better job than the other, really, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the Yamaha launch was, first of all, in an absolutely epic location. And it's quite weird. Because I'm in Malaysia now, my social media recommended things has switched to local, and I keep getting recommended that I should go and have drinks in the poolside bar where Yamaha did their team launch, because it's right below the Petronas Towers. It's a stunning location, and they unveiled a lot of stuff, because they didn't just unveil the factory team like they always have in the past. They unveiled the Pramac lineup, their new satellite squad, and their Moto2 team. So it felt like a real change in how things have been done at Yamaha. It kind of nicely reflected that there's a new team management, a new team structure, a new different way of doing things, and all felt very, very forward thinking, very different, very engaged. It's unusual to go to a team launch and have the press officers come to you and be like, do you need to speak to this member of management because he wants to talk?
Yeah.
And as we're going to hear with Paolo Pava, the new team boss. Then we went to Honda, and it was like their launch was at the huge Honda factory outside Jakarta. But the factory is like an hour out of the city in an industrial area. It did not have the same glamour as the Yamaha launch. I was the only international media there, and it was just very perfunctory.
Yeah.
It was like, here's our new bike. We're here to launch our new bike. Thanks for coming. See you later. And there was none of the same energy to it. I think that's the thing that stood out. Yamaha felt like they've turned a corner in the team launch. It felt like there was energy about the whole thing they're doing this year. And Honda just feels like, oh, it's more of the same. And, it was notable that the only big change that they've made kind of to their lineup structure management is obviously the signing of Romano Albiciano from Aprilia. And he stayed in Sepang for the shakedown instead of coming to the team launch. So he wasn't even there for it. So it just felt flatter than the Yamaha launch.
I guess defending Honda slightly there, you kind of want Romano Albiciano to carry on doing the job he's there for and being at the shakedown. Me, you, and Val did discuss in our work chat on the day, maybe like a video message or something from him, something from Aleix Espargaro, just to go, hey, we're the new things, would have made sense. But also that vibe of doing it from the factory sounds a bit like Honda is almost not creating big expectations by doing anything too glitzy.
I mean, if you wanted Albiciano there, you just do the team launch on a different day.
True.
And the other element of doing it from Jakarta as well that's worth noting is that whenever we were finishing up the Yamaha launch, which started at like 7:30 p.m. local time, by the time we got to the end of it, the four riders were like, come on, we need to get out of here. We're going back to the circuit because we're on track tomorrow, because they rode the second 2 days of the shakedown, all four of their riders. Honda didn't. Honda did their launch in the middle of the shakedown test on the second of 3 days, because neither their factory lineup or Johan Zarco were riding during the shakedown, which they have the concession status, they have the ability to use it.
Yeah.
And it's just weird that they chose to do it the way that they did, where they did, when they did it with that test, and that to reject track time seems really odd.
Yeah, definitely. When they've got the facility to do as much as they want effectively with their race riders as well as Espargaro. One thing, we'll stick with the kind of surface for a bit before we get into the kind of behind the scenes stuff. We should talk liveries a little bit. We'll talk liveries a lot with Ollie Card, our designer and part of the Race MotoGP podcast family at some point in the coming weeks, but we're keeping him on hold till LCR's out properly as well. Yamaha itself, pretty similar, but Pramac Yamaha with a little dose of Alpine, not the most successful F1 team to start associating yourself with right now, but quite a cool look for the new part, the big new part of the Yamaha lineup.
So starting with the factory bike, somehow they've changed very little, but they've made it look a lot faster. And it was only whenever I saw the two side by side that it looks quicker. So they've done something there. The Pramac bike looks amazing. They've managed to take a fairly wide color palette of like purples and reds and blacks and blues and make it all work really well. The Alpine, I think it helps that the Alpine branding is pretty clean.
True.
So that has kind of contributed to a fairly sharp look. The whole thing is a really impressive package. It looks good, and their Moto2 bikes look even better, because I think they also don't have stupid things like wings.
Yeah, I got a little overexcited the other day when you popped the first pictures in from the launch, and I hadn't spotted it as only Moto2, and was urging Val to see if he needed help updating our searchable liveries rundown piece. And I was like, oh, yeah, no wings. That's why it looks quite that striking. Ollie will be listening to this. If you disagree, Ollie, with our talk about clean branding, if you think purple, red, and blue should never go together, you'll get your moment.
He did message me after the launch to say I like. So that's a fairly good, like, yeah. Whenever the designer gives it the nod, it's
we trust Ollie. Honda, a much bigger visual change in the livery, possibly not quite what was expected. Obviously, there'd been a lot of talk about Castrol coming in to replace Repsol as title sponsor. And so I was expecting basically last year's LCR colours on the works bike, but it's really not that, is it?
They made a lot of connections back historically to kind of the Castrol sponsorship deal that Honda had in the Freddie Spencer era, where it was a Honda branded bike with Castrol, prominent Castrol sponsorship. I think that's what we got. It's been a bit Marmite, from what I can gather. People either love it or really don't like it. I like it a lot. I think it works really well. I think it's just retro enough that it works. Yeah, it was kind of what I expected, because I'd heard a few rumors coming in that Castrol would be main sponsor as opposed to title sponsor. Yeah. And it's worth noting that the team is still Honda HRC Castrol as opposed to the other way around. Yeah. So it is kind of in line with that. And the good news for everyone that loves it is that the new deal with the factory doesn't change the deal with LCR. So there's still going to be an LCR Castrol Honda for quite a bit of the season as well. So you still get to see that one as well. But yeah, I think it's an interesting partnership. It's obviously not Repsol level of involvement, but it's Castrol. It's Honda's first ever sponsor, which is quite nice. But it also does kind of link into the whole, well, nothing really has changed at Honda in the last 60 years.
Harsh, but we'll get to that. Yeah,
we'll come to that.
Yeah, I have to say, every time Stefan Bradl turned up on the test bike last few years with the red and blue colours, I'd thought, he's a lot nicer than whatever iteration of Repsol we had at the time, and I'd use an excuse to run a picture of it. So I'm not displeased with basically that being the livery and Castrol being a sort of inoffensive addition to it. So, livery-wise, they've both done all right. Launch-wise, certainly a 1-0 to Yamaha in terms of timing, sense of purpose, organisation, not making a mess of your own test program by doing it.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that it sounds like we're being a bit shallow and saying, one of them was in a really nice hotel and the other was in an industrial area. But you can read intent from these launches. You can kind of, the vibe that you get from a launch is sometimes quite indicative of the vibe of a team. And I think we've seen that already this year with, for example, the big singing and dancing launch that Aprilia did, who've never done that sort of thing before, completely. But they did it because they have a world champion. The shift in how they conducted themselves going into launches shows the way that they're trying to shift the way that the team conducts itself. And, so we can read into it. It's not just me being shallow because one of them had nice finger food and the other didn't.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Hey, Atlanta. Say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
One of the headline Yamaha changes among the many Yamaha changes is the departure of longtime team boss Lynn Jarvis, who's kind of retired but not retired. He's still there, isn't he, advising?
He was still at the team lunch. So, yeah. Retired, but still very much. I think he's technically a strategic advisor to give him his proper title.
Yeah, he's done enough for Yamaha through this whole project that you kind of want him nearby if he's up for it still. His replacement, Paolo Pavesio. Simon, what is Paolo's background? Because he's not necessarily going to be a familiar name to a lot of listeners.
So he's been a Yamaha man for over 20 years. Mainly, he comes from the consumer, the road bike side of things, has worked I think most of his career in the Netherlands, because Yamaha's European base is right next to Schiphol Airport. So he's been based there for a long time, but has done a lot of stuff over the more recent years with YME, Yamaha Motor Europe Racing, which runs the superbike side of things. So he's still been kind of racing adjacent, racing involved. He's now moved back to Italy to YMR, Yamaha Motor Racing headquarters, which is right next to Monza. So he's back living there to be based close to the factory. He's very much the kind of Yamaha corporate man. He's the guy that knows how the company works. There was a little bit of reservation whenever he was first sort of rumored to be taken over from a few people that, Yamaha were in this massive period of flux where they were trying to kind of ditch the Japanese mentality and become a bit more European and change the way that the team worked, and that maybe appointing a Yamaha corporate man wouldn't be the right person to continue that work. But, from what we've heard from him, from what we've spoken to him, he's got what the team is trying to do. He's not come in and tried to be, a Japanese salaryman with an Italian accent. He's engaging with their process, and I'm curious to see where it goes, because I think the people that were initially a bit opposed to him have probably got a bit of egg in their face right now if he lives up to what he's saying.
Let's hear what he's saying then. He had a good chat with you at the end of the Yamaha launch. So here is Paolo Pavesio, just on how he's kind of integrating this element of continuity and quite big change at Yamaha.
What we see tonight, I think, is no precedent for Yamaha. Yeah. We had satellite team in the past, but now we have two factory teams. Yes. We never had this kind of Moto2 project, which I also believe shows the fact that if you invest in a Moto2 project to build your future rider, is because you really work for your future, right? Yes. Yeah. So it's a technical challenge still. We know it's not easy, but we're putting all the best of what we have in a very open and not ideological approach.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is connecting to the V4 because it's normal. I understand completely media dynamics, and I understand also that top performance bike today, they have a V4.
Yes.
But as I said, we are not looking to what we know. We are open to learn something different. And we're doing something pretty crazy because we keep developing M1 of today, because we really keep developing. Basically, from tomorrow, the rider will test new chassis, developed engine, new aero package, new electron, a lot of new stuff. And in parallel, we are developing not an engine, but a new bike, because you cannot fit V4 into M1.
Of course. Yeah.
When this bike will be ready and what is the target? Of course, is to build the fastest bike we can, while we try to make M1 as fast as we can. There will be a moment that the new project will overtake, let's say, current one, maybe, hopefully. That will be the moment that we will be ready to evaluate the wildcards, and for sure not in 25, maybe in the future. This is going to be our new, let's say, technological platform, 26, 27.
Is there a possibility that you work with the V4 and then decide, you know what, Yamaha's heritage, Yamaha's technical ability is still with the inline?
As I said, we will not be ideological. Yeah. We want to have a bike which will allow us to win.
Yeah.
So, no, there is no there is a lot of credit to the CP4.
Yeah.
We love all the title we won, 8 titles with that bike.
Yeah.
But if we can make a different configuration, a faster sister of current bike, this is what we are trying to do actually.
Is this ideological change, the ability to work on 2 projects at once almost, is this partly because of the way that the team has restructured over the last few years? With the European input 100%. As well as the Japanese?
100%. It's, let's say, what really changed, I know the company very well, and I know the company I've been involved for many years in production model development.
Yeah.
So what I see now, it's really an equal responsibility, which are purely based on knowledge and capabilities. We have a group of engineers in Japan, big, strong, but we are growing our engineering capability in Europe, namely in Italy, with not only Italian engineers, but the responsibility is purely driven by the knowledge. We have, for example, on Aero, the lead group is clearly in Europe because the knowledge is here.
Yes.
But they work together with, it's really also in that area, not ideological approach. We want to be technology free.
Yes.
The best should be shaped in this mix between Japanese process, quality, procedures, I can say, and a bit of more creativity and fast thinking, which we have in Europe.
Yeah.
We can put it together in the right way. We used to say internally, maybe 1 + 1 makes a bit more than 2.
So Simon, you've got a pretty positive impression of Paolo so far. I like the fact that kind of off mic at the end of this interview, you can just about hear, when I was going through the file, you can hear him saying he'll be at every race. He's there to chat anytime. Very open.
Yeah.
He's got a lot on his plate, though, with the expansion back to having satellite bikes again, with, like he says, this parallel program as Yamaha ditches the inline 4 for the V4. He's talking a good game. The launch is obviously a good look. Having a satellite team back, having Jack Miller, Miguel Oliveira there's a lot of positivity, but there's a really big job to do and a couple of parallel streams of work as well. This is not an easy thing to balance.
There's a massive amount of work here this year. It's impressive the size of the project that Yamaha has obviously felt confident taking on. One thing of note from the launch was that every time I referred to Pramac as a satellite team, when I was talking to the factory riders, even I got corrected. Yeah. I think Fabio Quartararo corrected me to say no, they're factory riders too.
Yeah.
And they're going to have factory bikes. It's going to be 4 2025 bikes on the grid as a fully integrated, Ducati-esque. This is all the same machinery to try and make us as quick as we can program, which is really
hang on.
cool.
You say Ducati-esque, but this is the really striking thing for me after all these launches. Ducati's gone the opposite way.
Well, yeah, that's the weird thing. I say Ducati-esque because they're the ones that piloted this. They're the ones that did it first. And now it's the only way to do it, essentially.
Unless you're Ducati.
And it's something that... Unless you're Ducati. But it's, not doing this is the reason why Tech 3 left Yamaha.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
This is why they lost their long-serving satellite team in the first place. So they finally come around to that way of thinking. And there's a huge amount of resource that's going to be going into running 4 bikes instead of 2, which is impressive. There's a huge amount of resource gone into building not just 4 2025 bikes, but from talking to everyone associated with the program, 4 2025 bikes that are completely, really substantially different from where we ended last season. They've got new engines, they've got new frames, they've got new swinging arms, they've got new aero packages all here to test. No one's been resting on they've got no laurels to rest on, but no one's been chilling out over winter. They've done a huge amount of work to bring all of this new material to try to these 2 tests. With 3 tests because they get the shakedown as well as Sepang and Buriram. They've expanded the test rider program to support that because obviously we know that they brought in very recent MotoGP rider Augusto Fernandez from KTM to be a part of their test program. They still have Cal Crutchlow contracted, but he's still, from what we can gather, battling arm issues from a failed surgery at sort of this time last year. So, we'll just replace him with Andrea Dovizioso, who has now kind of ditched this weird, he's just there to benchmark. He's a bit of a freelance operator thing that they've been kind of using to describe him, because he was on stage in a factory Yamaha shirt, looking like one of the team. So they've built up that side of things really strongly. And then alongside that, they're not only building or starting to build an 850 bike for the 2027 rules, because everyone's starting to do that in some shape or form at the minute. They're also building a wholly new V4 bike just to see if it works, essentially. And it is a wholly new bike because the V4 engine is a different shape from the inline 4. It's going to need a different frame to make it work. So they're building a whole new MotoGP bike alongside still managing to bring all of these updates for their current bike, which isn't what I expected at all. I thought they'd maybe try and kind of semi-pause the inline 4 development. That's a really impressive amount of work for one factory to be doing. And it, anyone who ever thought that there was a chance that Yamaha would walk away from MotoGP after a few bleak years, absolutely not. This is a factory that feels like they are spending every penny they can pump into racing on a full program rebuild.
Yeah, very much so. The V4 has been the big summer last year as well, talking point once it emerged. This really wasn't just kind of, will Yamaha do it ever chat? It was like, it exists, it's being tested, it is going to happen. What's your take after being around Yamaha at launch on when we're actually going to see that in a bike that someone can see at a more public test or even racing?
I think they're not in any rush to bring it. So I'd be very, very surprised if they don't allow the race team to test it at some point this year. But I don't know when that's going to be. I think what we're going to initially hear will be kind of whispered rumors of there'll be a Jerez test and Augusto Fernandez will be there, and that doesn't sound like a Yamaha, to kind of suggest that there's something coming. But I think the main takeaway from the launch, from the chat, was that Yamaha themselves aren't absolutely certain sold that it's the way to do things. They're doing it because everyone else is doing it, but they're aware that that's a case of, that could be short-sighted. Jack Miller was made a quite good analogy of, Kalex has dominated MotoGP for years and years and years, and now suddenly everyone wants a Boscoscuro because they had like half a good season last year, and all these top teams are switching, but maybe it was a one season blip, and that is kind of where Yamaha are with the inline 4. All of their success has come from inline 4 machinery, not from V's, and the same for for a couple of other factories as well. That hasn't been the way that traditionally you've went about MotoGP. And yes, MotoGP has changed because ride height devices have altered fundamentally how the bike works, but all of those things are going away in 2027.
True.
So there's a good case for keeping the inline 4 development going, just in case we get to a point in the middle of next season and people suddenly realize, oh, wait a minute, we need to start building bikes like we used to again.
Yeah. It's not. I think Jack Miller's comparison with the Moto2 situation, I can see where he's coming from. I think there's more evidence of V4 success and more reasons for V4 success in MotoGP than the Boscoscuro thing may turn out to be an interesting blip in Moto2 history. But I think there's a more compelling case for Yamaha to at least give the V4 a proper go. And the fact that it was the other inline 4 manufacturer that pulled out, I think has skewed the picture a little bit. If both Suzuki and Yamaha were still around, still running inline 4s, and if at least one of them was doing okay, you maybe wouldn't be so urgently thinking V4 is the only answer here. But you've got one outlier left. They're not that competitive. It makes sense for them to change. But so 3 parallel engine development programs going on, while expanding to an additional satellite team as well. It's not really a satellite, it's factory in slightly different colours.
Yeah, you're not allowed to call it that. Fabio will be here to tell you off for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to Honda in just a moment. Before we leave Yamaha, though, it's your first chance to see Pramac as part of this Yamaha lineup properly. And already it seems, to me at least, it seems weird that Pramac Ducati is so recent, because this move to Yamaha and this change of role from championship winner as a team, and with the rider, with Jorge Martin last year, to part of this resurgent manufacturers fight back up the grid. It's such a change of status for Pramac, but it already feels kind of natural. I don't know, how did it feel at launch?
It feels very integrated very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly the same. It felt like they've been doing this for years together, which is I think mainly testament to people like Gino Borsoi and how quickly they've been able to make that transition over. It probably helps that there has already been this cultural shift within Yamaha to be a bit more European. I think this would have been a lot harder to do with the Yamaha of 4 years ago. But, there's a lot of senior Italians now within YMR, because you've got not just new team boss, but you've got the head of engineering, Max Bartolini, is there. There's all these people that have come in to kind of not take over the project from the Japanese side of things, but to be the European face of it, and that's, I'm sure, made life a lot easier for Gino Borsoi, for team owner Paolo Campanotti, to kind of integrate into it. And, also all of these guys know each other and have done for years. The paddock is a small world. Everyone's still pretty friendly. So that all helps. And they've, the Pramac team obviously was already super strong. There's no stress with bringing Jack Miller back into it because it's, it's such a family team. It's such a family team that Johan Zarco turned up to the team lunch.
Oh, that's lovely.
Former rider from like a year ago, who finally handed them their first success, and and all that, was like in Jakarta or in Kuala Lumpur, for the shakedown, and was like, I'll just come. So the Monster Energy backed Yamaha team launch with Pramac involved Johan Zarco turning up in a Red Bull shirt. Just be like, I'm here. Just thought I'd come and say hello.
When you were talking about Dovi earlier, part of me was just thinking, given how much Dovi kind of turned his career around at Tech 3 Yamaha, it's lovely that he gets a stint at Yamaha making a contribution now because the RNF thing didn't work. Yeah. And now you're just making me think, given how well Johan Zarco started with a Tech 3 Yamaha, wouldn't it be lovely if he came back to Pramac and Yamaha for his final year? I think he's fairly locked into Honda, but that's a little bit of a romantic storyline I wouldn't mind seeing now.
No, absolutely.
Get win number 2 on a Pramac Yamaha in 2 years' time or something.
And another MotoGP blast from the past, Pramac linked as well. The one surprise from the team launch was they announced that the boss of the Moto2 team will be none other than Alex De Angelis.
Oh, yes. Yeah, fantastic.
It's just another element of this, this kind of, it all shows what Pramac is like as a team.
I thought for a second there you're going to mention Yoni Hernandez, but that's purely because I've got my head in MotoGP 2015 mode, because we are recording more of our retro specials as well.
No sign of him yet, but we are going to Argentina, so let's keep an eye out.
Absolutely. If you want to catch up with MotoGP 2015 Revisited Retro Series, you know where to go. This is the Patreon plug. Come and join us in the Race Members Club, the-race.com/members-club. Find us there, or go straight to Patreon, search for the race there. More episodes of MotoGP 2015 coming up soon after pre-season testing. And also, Simon, you've got to pin Jack Miller down and bombard him with questions from the members as well.
Yes, I do.
He escaped you at the launch, but you're going to get him.
Might do that tomorrow. Might message their press officer now and try and get that done tomorrow. But we have lots of time together over the next few weeks.
Yes. Yeah. It's going to happen. And that list of questions you're putting to Jack is absolutely epic.
Yeah,
I'm really
it is.
looking forward to listening to that.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free Second Look review. Second Look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
Well, Yamaha made quite a big visual demonstration of all its changes. The big change at Honda, which is basically the arrival of Romano Albesiano and to a lesser extent Aleix Espargaro, was all far away from the launch. But the riders were asked about Albesiano in particular. Here's what Luca Marini and Joan Mir had to say about the major behind-the-scenes change at their team.
From Romano, we are expecting a lot. I think he could start working on the project only on January, so it will need some time to see all his high knowledge, the project, his ideas, but for sure will give us a sort of guidelines for be smart and make the correct changes on the bike, because for sure he has a fantastic knowledge of all the Aprilia history, all the process that bring Aprilia to win races. But also we have other engineers coming from other manufacturers that can share a lot of knowledge. And I think that Romano will help us a lot and give us especially this more strategic approach with more good guidelines and with clear ideas. This for me would be the key.
Yes, well, Albesiano Romano has a completely different working method that was working in Aprilia. He's now in its time to implement his working method and to adapt it to the team. And I think that he's in that process. He will bring some fresh air, some fresh ideas from a bike that is a competitive factor at the moment. And I have a lot of trust on him. I think that he can do a great job.
How did Mir let's go Mir first, because Mir's always the kind of interesting, emotional one in this Honda lineup. Marini is kind of, you know what you're getting with Marini. It's unlikely to be negative. It's going to be thoughtful. It's going to be realistic. Mir could be anything, really, any day of the week at Honda, but it's probably 4 days out of 7. It's going to be grumpy in some way.
Yeah.
He wasn't that impressed with things at the Barcelona test. How did he come across at the launch?
Not considerably notably better, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably because I came from the Yamaha launch that there was a very stark contrast between the level of excitement between their two. And the fact that the most exciting thing about the Honda launch was the fact that they've signed a new engineer, a European engineer to head up the project. It reinforces the notion that they're essentially 2 seasons behind Yamaha. That Yamaha saw the writing on the wall. They made big changes to their structure. They made big changes to the way they go about developing a MotoGP bike. And they're now starting to benefit from it and reap the rewards of it. But Honda are still not fully committed to doing things that way. They're dragging their heels a little bit. And it genuinely feels like the gap between them is getting bigger. It feels like Honda is getting left behind as Yamaha starts to close down on the guys at the front. And I think that was kind of reflected in the way that Mir was answering questions at the launch.
Well, one of the answers he gave about Albesiano, he sort of went off on a bit of a thought train to himself halfway through the answer about whether Albesiano would get a chance to do things his own way or have to kind of follow Honda rules. He sort of ends it on I think it'll be okay, but it wasn't that convincing, was it?
It wasn't convincing, was it? And that's basically that's the whole thing, isn't it? When we spoke to Yamaha, one of the words that was used the most often was ideology.
Yeah.
And how the ideology has changed, the culture has changed, and it hasn't at Honda. It's still the same team, just with a few Europeans in it now. And you can have the fastest test rider in the world and the best engineer in the world working for him, but if the people actually building the bikes doesn't listen to them, it doesn't change anything. And I think a bit of Mir's frustration comes from that, and the fact that he's arrived and saw what he has to test.
Yeah.
Here, and probably heard what Yamaha has to test as well, and not been too impressed with the difference between the two.
When we use Japanese versus European, we've got to be careful with it because it comes across harsher and implying something different to what we really mean by that. It's not so much that we're definitely not saying a Japanese engineer can't succeed in MotoGP because Japanese manufacturers have dominated MotoGP.
Exactly.
It's more kind of corporate versus racer to an extent. I would say it's more kind of the go on.
There's a Japanese, I think it's fair to say that there's a Japanese corporate structure that's very top down.
Yeah.
So it's development is led by the guy at the top. And what we've seen the European manufacturers do quite well is kind of shake that up a bit and have it a bit more of a level playing field for everybody involved in the project. And right now, I think that's more important than ever in MotoGP because you need to have a team doing aero. You need to have a team building engines. You need to have a team building frames. The aero thing has really, really shook up how we build motorbikes fundamentally. And it can't just be a component that a different engineering team adds to the bike at the end of it. It has to be integrated. And that's part of the reason why the Japanese teams have been left behind, because the guys at the top don't know anything about aero because they've been there so long that they predate aero essentially. So then the guys that have come in with the aero knowledge haven't been able to have their ideas implemented because of this top-down structure. Whereas the European teams have just went, oh yeah, okay, let's make sure that the aero guys are in every meeting and we build a bike that's kind of complementary to all its various parts. Albiciano has the ability to make that cultural shift because he's the guy that did it at Aprilia.
Yeah.
But if they don't give him the top-down power to make those changes, he just becomes sidelined and frustrated.
Yeah, and that's the key. He's clearly a great signing given what he achieved at Aprilia, and not just what he achieved, but how he achieved it. Small budget, lots of innovation, lots of ideas, a team that was a laughing stock, very much not that anymore. Such a different situation at Honda with potential budget and the resources. But yeah, when you list those factors, part of me does think, is it actually going to be the right fit? Is this going to be an environment where he can get on with doing his best work, where things will be taken on board?
If the Yamaha example is anything to go by, it's going to take a year of him not achieving anything. Because that's kind of what we saw whenever they brought in Luca Mammarini as the new engine builder.
Yeah.
It basically took a year of him not being able to get away with doing much before people realized that, oh no, wait a minute, actually he needs to be given a bit more free rein. And then that's whenever they brought in Max Bartolini and they changed the whole structure around it. But the problem is that it just, again, it reinforces this idea that Honda are behind.
Yeah. Okay, let's weigh this up then. We said this was kind of Honda versus Yamaha. I think I know where this is going. I'm going to throw a few categories at you and you can say which you think comes out on top. Let's just go broadly first. Rider lineup, Honda or Yamaha, who would you have?
Yamaha, but it's skewed heavily by the fact that they have Fabio Quartararo.
Yeah.
And I think that the Honda lineup is not bad at all. Marini has really developed. Mir is a world champion. Zarco is a fantastic signing. Whereas Yamaha have an Alex Rins who's still using a crutch at the team presentation.
That's not good, is it?
That's not a good sign. And then they have two guys who are super fast, but they're also a bit hot and cold in the satellite lineup with Oliveira and Miller. So it's Yamaha, but it's not by a huge amount.
Yeah, I think if you took away Quartararo, you haven't got too much difference, and Honda probably actually edges it in terms of everybody else. Actually, I think definitely edges it. But you've almost got two lineups where you've got all the people who can put the work in, have got the experience and can give the feedback to help move it forward. And then Yamaha's got this kind of cherry on top that you can be pretty confident would win a championship.
Exactly.
When that bike is in the right place. So what they've changed over the winter, who comes out best in that category, Yamaha or Honda?
Yamaha by a mile, because Honda doesn't seem to have changed too much over the winter.
Livery?
I mean, factory bikes only, Honda for me, because I really do love it. It harks back to a lot of road racing liveries, a lot of mid-80s liveries that I like. But I really like the Pramac bike. But we can't judge that until next week, until we see the SCR bikes.
Yes, absolutely.
And if Zarco unveils a Castrol bike, then they win that as well, I'm afraid. As much as the new Pramac bike's lovely, because
let's let Honda have this one. Easy one next. Approach to the launch.
Yamaha. I mean, they just they felt, Yamaha felt like they wanted to do a launch as opposed to had to do one.
Yeah. That makes sense. And let's throw a final one in. Test rider lineup.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's probably one where Honda tips it.
Yeah, that was my thinking here.
Because the way I see it, essentially they've each got two riders who are roughly comparable. Because one has Taka Nakagami and one has Augusto Fernandez, who are both very recent MotoGP riders who are of a similar level.
Yeah.
Who were of a similar level the last year racing against each other. But then you've both got guys who have fought for a MotoGP championship and knows what that's like and are, consistent race winners. But one of those guys has just stopped racing.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that Espargaro's career is so fresh, as opposed to Dovi's, who's been out of it for a while, tips that balance a little bit in his favour. So I would say Honda have the edge there, especially whenever you consider that it's still backed up as well by people like Stefan Bradl, who's floating around somewhere doing something for them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, Espargaro is not only very freshly out of MotoGP, but he ended on a real high as well.
Yeah.
Whereas Dovi was on a bit of a tail-off trajectory. Yeah. Hit the end to his career, didn't really do his career justice.
And the other thing about Leish as well is that there's always been this kind of mentality in MotoGP that sometimes if you're test rider for a Japanese team, it's a good thing if you're quite a forceful character.
Yeah.
Because being quite opinionated gets your opinions across a lot easier. There was a lot of excitement from Yamaha whenever they first signed Cal Crutchlow for that reason, from the Yamaha riders. And I think Aleix is quite a forceful character. He's brought his crew chief with him and he's brought his previous factory's technical boss with him.
Yeah.
So he comes as part of a package that's very strong because Antonio Jimenez has went with him from Aprilia. So all in all, that I think it's quite hard to look at that as anything but a very, very good signing.
Yeah, it's a real shame he wasn't part of the launch. Simon, I think you've got a good chance of tracking him down during the next few weeks.
I'm sure we'll bump into him at some point.
You want a nice chat about cycling, and I'm sure you'll...
Well, yeah he's now a professional cyclist since the last time I saw him. So
exactly. You've got a bit to catch up on.
Exactly.
Yeah, so let's make sure we do hear from Aleix and get kind of his take on how Honda's getting on behind the scenes as well. But I think from the end of that kind of top trumps matchup, your prediction is basically that Yamaha's the one that's going to be making some waves and getting back to business this season. But Honda might be on for a really good wild card on a very pretty bike if they let Aleix
I'd be surprised if we don't see a Yamaha podium like fairly early on.
Yeah. My only skepticism about that is there's so much about what it's doing that I don't feel is necessarily for an immediate quick fix necessarily. Like there's the parallel packages, the V4 and everything.
There is a part of that. Well, but I think the fact that they're able to run these simultaneous development streams means that there's still a lot coming for the inline 4 that should make it quicker.
True. Yeah.
So
tail end of last season, some of Quartararo's best moments in like that last quarter of the season wouldn't have taken massive amounts for that to turn into a podium necessarily. Yeah. With a little bit of luck on his side, he was flying.
I mean, if they just put a little bit of fuel in the bike on a few occasions, you'd have been a lot closer.
Right, Simon, thank you for waking up at whatever time it is in the morning or afternoon, wherever you've ended up. I'll let you take a bit of a break now. I'm off to record the video version of this with Val. Let's see if he is as full of optimism about Yamaha as Simon is. You can find that on the Race Moto YouTube channel shortly.
Highly unlikely.
I'll report back. It's quite fun doing two separate things with you two with different approaches. I've let you come up with separate structures as well. So let's see how that goes. Pre-season testing starts on Wednesday. Listeners, we will probably do 2 podcasts from that. I reckon we'll aim for a snap one after day 1 with some initial impressions, and then we'll do a full end of test rundown with all 3 of us definitely on the Friday one to prove that we are still friends. So we're back in your ears very soon. Simon's off to pause before I get him to talk about 2015 in a minute as well.
The Athletic.
It's the final week of the transfer window, and that sound you can hear is David Ornstein's phone blowing up. I'm Iowa Kimwalere, and you can join me, David, and our esteemed reporters every day on the Athletic FC podcast, as we leave no stone unturned on picking every major deal.
You know, this is a major development, and let's see how it goes forward.
Don't miss a beat with the Athletic FC podcast. Listen for free wherever you get your podcasts.